Hello and welcome to the Miko Bits Show, and I'm your host, Miko Bits. We do help you keep up with the fast-moving world of Bitcoin and blockchain. So today I have a very special guest. It's Cheng from C.R.E.A.M, and it's a DeFi project, a very exciting one. So really looking forward to having him unpack this crypto rules, everything around me. So it's a very exciting and fun brand. As with all my shows, it is a opinion show and entertainment, so it's not intended to be investment advice. We may talk about assets on the show, but of course it's not investment advice. So seek a licensed professional for all of that. So I guess without further ado, here's Leo.
Hey everybody. Good to see you again, Miko. It's fantastic catching you on this side of the tech industry. Actually, I think there's a lot of history between us.
It is, and I just think it's the greatest thing. We're going to dig into that quite a bit in the show, especially when we talk about kind of superpowers, and the kind of things that you're able to do, because I really appreciate kind of this background that you have in kind of DevOps and in the kind of developer tools world. So we're going to get right into that. But I think the first thing that always the audience wants to hear is kind of, what is the problem that you're solving in obviously in the DeFi space with C.R.E.A.M? So I'd love to understand how you define that.
Yeah, I think capital efficiency is really the summary of it all. I know it's very, very broad. Like, what the heck does that mean? I think that we're serving the general needs of the DeFi marketplace. So we come at this from the angle of a DeFi user. And, really the genesis of all this is like, we as DeFi users on a team are like, hey, this whole DeFi summer was great. We're using these things, but why isn't there X? Why isn't there Y? Why isn't there Z? This stuff should exist. And we finally just said, you know what? We should just build it ourselves. So that's really been the kind of guiding light. Let's help our users be capital efficient. Let's help our DeFi users get the things they want that make sense. And roughly that led to a debt market structure that we have today with other kind of products that we could talk about later.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about kind of the debt market. Like, how does that relate to capital efficiency, and how does it work? I mean, you could just grab a piece of it because I think it's pretty big by now.
Right. Yeah. So the debt market currently in the crypto space, served by folks like Compound and Aave and us. So we are a fork of Compound, and we do really like the guidance and the leadership that Compound has built in the industry, broadly speaking, as well as kind of like the guidance they provide us on C.R.E.A.M. I think the debt market is interesting in that it's the basic building block in the money market structure. It's like talking with friends or just getting into crypto, for example. They say, hey, now that I have a Bitcoin or I have a Ethereum of some kind, what can I do with it? Like, I've heard about farming, I've heard about yield, like, can I put it in a bank account? And that's what this is. It's like effectively, it's a protocol that allows peer-to-peer lending. So users can send their wrapped Bitcoin or Ethereum into this protocol, and it goes into a pool, and other users can borrow from it. So it structures, you can think of it, people use it like a savings account where they can get some kind of yield on the underlying basis. So put some Ethereum in, put some Bitcoin in, and people can borrow against it and pay you an interest as a user. Or on the other side, you can borrow the assets that are on the protocol.
That's fantastic. And so I guess would love to understand some of the numbers, like how's it going? I mean, I know it's going pretty well, so I would just love to hear about those.
Yeah, so the TVL metric is what people look at in the industry.
Sure.
Now, I have my opinions about whether it's right or wrong, but that's okay. We'll go with that measure for now. We're sitting at about $600 million of total value locked right now. So for some traditional friends in the traditional finance space, I tell them it's kind of like AUM, but it's slightly different because it nets out the total borrow from the total supply number. So the total value lock number here measures the total amount of money that's in the market, subtracting out the total number that's borrowed out. So that's the total value locked, meaning that the number of actual assets that's sitting in our smart contracts. I think, but quick note on the TVL thing. My gripe with it is basically as we look for capital efficiency, having a bunch of money sit locked on our smart contracts that may or may not be used. The may not be used part is exactly antithetical to capital efficiency because you want your money working, right? So if you have $1 billion bank with nobody borrowing it from it, then is it still serving anybody? So that's kind of that's my gripe with TVL. But anyway, we can
No, I think
talk
that
about that.
that's one of the amazing things that's happening in like Uni v3 with a little bit
Hmm.
around kind of like the concept of AMM, right? Because I think, AMM has kind of traditionally been about, I would say, like static liquidity, as opposed to dynamic liquidity, right? And,
Yep.
that's been kind of the traditional power of the club or central limit order book, which is much more about dynamic liquidity because of matching, right? So the thing that's
Hmm.
really complicated is that like matching of Alice and Bob, kind of necessitates historically this kind of like centralization, right? So I guess for me, efficiency has been really interesting. It's an interesting thing to look out for in DeFi. Because I agree with you. What's funny about it is isn't it true that the more that you lend out, the lower your TVL gets?
Right. So one example here is our Iron Bank that's is post our Yearn ecosystem merger, our Iron Bank product that we developed with Yearn. For a while, we kept the fees very low, and it was heavily borrowed out. I mean, I think when we first launched, there was about 100 and change million bucks in it, and there was maybe 20 million bucks left of room. So, like, the utilization is huge, but by this TVL metric, we're getting slammed. Like, oh well, there's no TVL growth. It's like, yeah, the money's not here because it's being used. You know what that means? It's generating fees. So
Yeah.
you know what that means? It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's putting you're putting money to work, right? And
Yeah,
that's the whole
so
point.
why should we be penalized by having a high utilization number? I don't know, but whatever, it's fine. Like we're not here to
No,
work
no, no,
towards
but I love
those
these
metrics. Yeah.
points. These points are super valuable, right? Because in essence, the thing that's so funny is that there's this benchmark in the
Yes.
industry, right? But in a way, it almost cuts against your core
Yes.
proposition, right? Because your core proposition is that, well, we're really trying to be efficient, right? We're trying to make money more efficient, and part of the efficiency of money is actually having it go to work, right? Instead of
Yes.
just sitting there, right? So obviously,
Right.
the idea of like, oh, but TVL, it's like, well, yeah, TVL is money that's sitting there, so like,
That's right.
it's not a measure of like value; it's kind of the opposite.
And another problem in the industry today with the numbers look is that we started out being multi-chain. You know, we're one of the first on Binance Smart Chain before this whole like OMG gas is expensive. Let me move to Binance Smart Chain because it's cheaper. We went there actually also for capital efficiency. But the problem I'm getting to here is that when you look at all traditional measuring sites right now, no one site right now collectively says, "Oh, well, I see C.R.E.A.M has money here in Ethereum, C.R.E.A.M has money here in BSC, C.R.E.A.M has money here in Phantom." So the total TVL for C.R.E.A.M is actually A plus B plus C. Oh, and then C.R.E.A.M also has 25,000 Ethereum
Yeah.
staking in E2. So that's another TVL thing. So nobody actually adds all this up. So we're getting penalized for no sites that measure everything. We're getting penalized for, just like utilization being higher. So, I mean, I'm not here to like build a new measuring system or anything, but if anybody's listening out there, if you could build something that measures all of these things, I'd be pretty happy. And I certainly
Yeah,
give it a
that's
shot.
so significant, right? Because obviously, one of the things that's so juvenile about the system is that we haven't really reconciled cross chain very well. So we
Yes.
really don't kind of have our heads wrapped around the implications of it. So that's fascinating, and I really, this is really almost like the stuff that this show is built around. Is just kind of continuing to illuminate these kinds of like elements of the industry that kind of need to get updated. So it's really great. So what I love to kind of shift gears around, have
Hmm.
you talk a bit about yourself. I love to kind of understand sort of what is your special jam. Like, what is the thing that you do that like makes you you and makes you kind of like is kind of a cool dude.
Yeah, thanks. I'm very interested in a lot of things, and in a way that's like I remember looking back at my career, going like, dude, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I still ask myself that question sometimes. It's like, what are you doing with your life? Like, what is the thing that you do? And then it turns out that I just love nerding out on technology. Like I love learning about, but how does this work? But why? Like, how does it work this way? I don't understand. Let me read this blog post. Let me check out this person's tweet. Let me put my hands on this thing and let me put some money in this new ecosystem. Let's see what happens. And so I think if we back up a bit, I started my career out in Silicon Valley doing hardware stuff of all things. I worked at Applied Materials out of college.
Amazing.
And I was on the finance side, and I took some classes learning about semiconductor equipment manufacturing process, which has nothing to do with blockchain, of course, from like a practical end user standpoint. We could track the supply chain all the way back, but anyway. And then I ended up at Apple when Steve Jobs came back, and that was fun. But my friends were like, "Hey, man, why are you going there? Like, the company's dying. Nobody's using Macs, and whatever." But obviously, they did okay since. And it's just a lot of like learning about passion, learning about technology, and the passion for learning itself, which led me to other endeavors from like semiconductor equipment to contract manufacturing to product marketing at Belkin, so consumer products. And then you and I had a little stint together in the DevOps space. Like that's like So I went from, funny story, I went from hardware to cloud computing because I met some cool dudes at Burning Man, very San Francisco, and then I ended up moving in with some buddies, and one guy launched this Solana Labs company, a CI/CD company that we ended up working with Amazon Web Services. Geeked out about cloud a lot. Worked with Coinbase to serve their DevOps needs, and then that's where I learned about Bitcoins. And then I was like, wow, this thing is really cool. And then when 2017, when Coinbase sent me the note saying like, hey, we're adding Ethereum on our markets, I'm like, sweet, let me check it out. And I was like, mind blown. The nerd in me was so excited. Wait a minute. There's this Web3 AWS thing that I love so much right now. And then somebody is putting monetization on top of this. This is fantastic. And then I kind of unfortunately flipped in 2017 June all my Bitcoins to Ethereum. But it was a good lesson in that I really dug deep into Ethereum and kind of went like, deep into that space. And that's kind of how that intellectual curiosity and the ability to sort of, be passionate, dig into it, and ask people and explain to people things, I think is what really culminates how I got to this place today, I think. I mean, I also, picked up along the way, like DJing. So I DJed at Burning Man one time with my sound camp. That was cool. Did some professional blackjack playing. Like, there's just a lot of
wow.
odds and ends. When I was in college, I worked at Disneyland. There's just like, I was just curious about like, how does the world work, and why are they passionate about the things they're passionate about? And do I like this thing? I mean, there are things I didn't like and I moved on from, but the things I did like and I'm passionate about, I pursue. So that's
amazing.
Yeah.
So I would say that maybe your superpower is kind of almost like curiosity, right? That you're just checking it out. You're like, whoa, what's going on over there? And like, you're just kind of kicking the tires. You're like, hey, this is pretty cool. I like this. Or
Right. What does it all mean? Why is this? Why are these people here? And how can I help? That's actually roughly how I got into Burning Man. That's roughly how I got into crypto. And that's what I tell people who want to get started in the crypto industry to do. Like, jump into the community, volunteer, do stuff, learn stuff. If you like it, stay. If you don't like it, move on.
there's definitely kind of a Ethereum / Burning Man kind of
Yep.
nexus. I like that you have a New Relic coffee mug. That's really, yeah, that's very OG as well.
Thanks.
APM and all that kind of stuff. I really,
Yeah.
I like the mindset that you're describing though, because when you think about kind of something like AWS as a compute platform, right? Like the thing that's amazing, obviously that's a super mature tool chain, right? So you're talking about DevOps tool chain, and it's in a way like we're kind of rebuilding all of that, right? We're rebuilding
Yes.
all of the internet infrastructure, and the thing that's been shocking to me is like I was an old school API economy guy, right? So in a sense, I was
Yep,
really
definitely.
interested in kind of how computers kind of like become kind of composable in the network, right? And
Microservices.
yeah, exactly, right. So that all's happening, right? And it's happened,
Yeah.
right? But the thing that I think is fascinating is that the state of the art today are these stupid gateways that actually count API calls and then like bill you at the end of the month, right? It's sort of like
Yes.
Twilio kind of style, right? And
Right.
it's sort of like, why are we doing that? Like, why aren't the machines just paying each other, right? Like, the machine needs disk space. It's like, well, why doesn't the machine pay the other machine, for the disk space? And why don't they just settle? Why don't they get like
Right.
settlement and finality, like, and why don't they pass tokens around? It's kind of like, well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and
that's
why
where we're
don't they
at.
just be market based so that when things get expensive, the incentives go up for things to get added that are being used? Like, and that goes back to the efficiency thing,
Yeah.
which actually the point that I haven't mentioned here is that other than capital efficiency, is that we're driving things toward a protocol to protocol world. I mean, if you look at the lending market space right now, it's very peer to peer, right? So Miko puts in one ETH, Leo borrows the ETH, Miko gets paid because Leo pays interest roughly, right? But if you look at that thing and you think, well, then but the kind of protocol to protocol as it relates to kind of efficiencies that I the light bulb came on when I was looking at flash loans initially, and I thought, okay, wait a minute. So a user goes and borrows some money from like a DYDX, Uniswap, or Aave, um, and then they like it gets sent to like a Uniswap, gets into the currency they need, and then maybe they liquidate a position on Cream for someone who's overextended, and then they take the underlying token out, they go back to Uniswap, they change it for the thing that they owe, and they send it back to the originating place all in one block, and that's amazing. And then I think, okay, hold on, but does the EVM or the system itself even care that, oh, hold on, in the Web2 world, it would be like, oh, let me log into, Aave and with my credentials. Let me
Yes.
borrow that. And then let me then go to Uniswap. Oh, hold on, do I have my SSO correct? Like, am I logged into the right account? All that other garbage.
Yep.
And then you go through and you go, oh, hold on, like, do I have the right keys to get into Cream and Liquid? No, all of this is open. Like, no, just connect the thing and it works. You don't have to call me. You don't have to be like, do you
Yes.
know the BD guy at Cream? Can we get a discussion? No, just connect it and go. Now, but that then opens up, then why not then the possibility of you've got like one ETH deposited somewhere on the blockchain and it's all connected. And why then can't you borrow one ETH at some other point in the block, or not one ETH? It depends on your collateral ratio, LTV, etc. But why can't you borrow that value somewhere else along the chain? Maybe it's not the same project, but who cares, right? Because if one ties to the other, then that's capital efficiency. And that's why we're doubling down on this protocol to protocol thing. And I think that learnings from Web 2 makes all this super obvious.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's such a really interesting and dynamic lens, right? Because the thing that's so crazy is we're rebuilding the whole internet, right? So like
Yeah.
why I don't think we should leave everything behind. I think there's some pretty cool stuff that got built, and why not make it all better?
Yeah, I actually think that, like, you were talking about app decks earlier. I actually asked this question. I don't think the folks on my team fully understood what I was asking, but I said, hey, can we build a dashboard, or is there a tool where I can get an app decks for what Cream smart contracts look like? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, like how fast is it? How expensive is it? How much money is there? And can people access? Are there problems? Are they mad? Are they angry? Are they sad? Are they happy? Like, where do I get that? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, all right, we'll deal with that later.
Well, it's funny, right? Because if you go back to the history of kind of things like API management and New Relic, right? Like it's basically overloading the class loaders, right, and injecting kind of
Hmm.
instrumentation, right? So in a sense, like the EVM doesn't really have that, as a native function. So but it might be interesting if it did. It might be interesting to build hooks for like APM on top of the EVM.
Yeah, I mean something like Nansen can build probably. I mean, it's like I just think there's so much there that's not covered, and there's so much more like, I mean, I don't know, like, but then I also see the same thing happening just like Web 2, like devs like to build their own tools, so there's also that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess what I would love to get is kind of sort of the things that like motivate you, that excite you, that kind of like what are the things that like drive you, in a sense, like why are you doing this as opposed to anything else?
Yeah, it's so fun. I find myself, especially in this bull market scenario, people asking me about like crypto and things. They're just like, mind blown. And I thrive in this kind of like it's not all mapped out. It's fun. I can learn about stuff. There's no set path, and that's what I like. It's like a choose your own adventures. I used to play World of Warcraft a little too much.
Yep. A
A,
lot of
and I
us.
remember, yeah, I remember back in the day, like it was cool. I can go in the open world PvP. I played on this BlackRock server and had a troll mage, and it was fun that I could just blast people, even though I had lower level or worse equipment. But I was better at knowing how the spells work. But then eventually there were these sites that said, "Oh, get this equipment, spec it this way. You'll be super powerful and you'll defeat people." And then at that point, it's more about grinding out the equipment, following the recipe, and then
Yep.
I kind of lost interest.
Yep.
So in that same way, I wanted to. This excites me in that. Wait a minute, like I have discussions with friends and journalists about some of the most degen ideas I've had, and it results in super high yields and super scary things to some people. But that's it. Like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why is nobody doing this? Why can't we do this? And then so that kind of like optimization when there's no exact mapped out path super excites me, and creating that new innovation in this field, like there's plenty of room for that. There's no shortage of experimentation. There's no shortage of deploying and production and testing the crap out of it and then going, did it work? I don't know. If it didn't, you lost your money, so sorry, bud. But if you being me, like the person who tried it, of course. And user funds are super important, but like experiment, push to limits, do something cool and new, and then like geek out. Like I love that.
This is very cool because, in a sense, you're talking about this kind of wild frontier, right? And
Yes.
and I want to draw a link. I know I drew a link between kind of Burning Man and Ethereum community, right? But I can also draw links between kind of the gamers, right? Because obviously there's a whole bunch of famous gamers. But I learned, for example, that Vitalik was maining a gnome warlock. Which is funny because that was kind of what I was maining, so I felt very fun, But I would say that to me, the thing I wanted to kind of switch us towards away from WoW is more talking about I think this feeling. I think that the thing that is really exciting about what you're building is, you're kind of in the frontier, right? And in a
Yes.
way, you're working closely with the Yearn ecosystem, right? So I guess I'd love to hear, because in a sense, if you talk about the Wild West, like, I think that I think of Andre Cronje as almost like the sheriff of the Wild West. He's kind of the guy.
Yes.
He's the guy who can like shoot from the hip, and he
And
can
he
kind of
does.
he can hit a nickel from like a mile out. Like he's definitely like a Wild West sheriff. So like, in a sense, how did that come about, and how's that been?
Yeah, it's been great. I think Andre, man, he's on another level. I gotta say, like, I feel dumb sometimes chatting with him, and I'm like, I understand those words. I understand those concepts. Give me a minute. Like, let me come back to you. This is async communications. Let me come back to you. Like, his brain just works at a different speed, I think. And I mean, so when we first launched Cream, we did integrate the things that degens want. And initially in that farming summer, that's wow, almost a year ago now. Kind of, we're coming up on a year, and like it was like okay, well, why don't we have YFI? Like YFI is a thing that people need all the time to now seed themselves for, excuse me, for like yam and sushi farms and all these
Yep.
other things. And why can't there be a place to borrow that if people want to take that risk? So it segregates out like, oh, I have Wi-Fi, but I'm afraid to farm. Well, then put it here. Other people that are not afraid to farm will owe you either way, and they can farm with it. And then their gains become your gains, and that's kind of how we see it. So we ended up building in all these useful things, and it became like, wow, a vault for like the stable coins, and you get really good yields. Wow, it was like 15%. Now that number gets like much higher today, but um, and then it's like, why ETH? That's great. So why would I ever hold on to regular ETH or regular stable coins when I can have the highest yielding stable coin on one hand and I can have the highest yielding ETH on the other hand? And then it's like, why don't I have a marketplace where I could swap between one and the other rather than wind it back from Yearn Vault to Curve to such and such?
Yeah.
So all of this is like, let's make it easy for people to use. Let's put things out there that people need. And then as that started going on, we started as a team, having discussions with Andre, and it's
Yep.
just like, hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do that. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do that. And then eventually it was like, hey, should we just merge this thing and like run this
Yeah.
thing together?
I
Like,
love
yeah, all
it.
right, cool, let's do this. And then so ideas became much easier because literally we talked about it like on like a Monday or Tuesday, and then we like the next day said, all right, what are we how do we want to do this? And then the day after that, just announced it on Medium, and that was it. I
Wow.
think there's a lot of lack of understanding from there's not a lot written about it either, I think. But
Yep.
like, what does it mean to have a merger in this space? Some people
Ha.
say, oh, no, no, it's just marketing. No, it's just the partnership. And, to be fair, I think it is a merger because right after that announcement came out of Medium, we were the whole team. We were added to the Telegram groups, the Discords. We're in the middle of all this, and the benefit is that these are our colleagues at Yearn. Like some people
Yep.
say, "Oh, well, your partnership with Yearn is like, dude, it's not a partnership." And let me tell you why. We're in these groups, and they're like, "Hey, what if we add this?" Like, all right, great, done. And like, let's do this Iron Bank idea. All right, let's deploy it. Let's add these Yearn Vault LPs to the cream markets. Okay, let's do that. And it's just like we are the Yearn lending market. And so I think that part needs to be clarified for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then the Iron Bank certainly is a collaboration. I don't know if you've seen the crazy rates on it. I haven't checked this morning, but it started out at like 440% APY on stablecoin basis. I think it calmed down a bit to like 100% APY, which is still nutty. But I mean, I can't yeah, like I am so grateful for the people in the Yearn ecosystem, the kind of the help that they provided, the things I've learned from Andre and team, and what some people have said, like, "Hey, Leo, you've gotten a lot more big brain in this DeFi space," but I think that's because it's rubbing off of Andre. You're not that smart. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right.
Ha, ha, ha. I like that. I like the humility. Obviously, it's incredible, and I love the story, right? And for me, you've naturally flowed into the next question, right? Which is it's about shout outs. So I've been kind
Oh
of
yeah.
we've already did a shout out for Andre, and I would
hmm
love to kind of get any other folks you'd like to recognize. If you want to just give a shout out to someone, please do.
Yeah, I think a few people come to mind right now. I think like Sam and Carlos from the Yearn ecosystem, the strategists, those guys have been super helpful outside of Andre himself. And then I definitely have learned a lot from uh, the MetaCartel crew. That whole crew initially, I mean, Peter over there and MetaCartel Ventures. So I went from MetaCartel, the grant giving org, to MetaCartel Ventures, the investment side. I learned so much from those guys, and at the same time, I also joined the Lao, and so Aaron Wright and the whole
Wow.
Lao crew is very interesting. I do find just a little World of Warcraft callback that like it's been said, and I didn't come up with this, but I think it does make sense that the Lao is more like the Alliance, and MCV is more like the Horde, and they're working together sometimes, and sometimes it seems like they're opposing, but whatever.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, and of course the team at C.R.E.A.M has been fantastic. I think part of the challenge here is that crypto is very Western dominant, English based, North America, Europe, and English speaking places, and for a lot of folks that don't speak English natively, they feel a little bit shy. But I think there are a lot of super talented folks on our team, developers. Our product manager and our marketing manager, they're great as well. So the team that's just like definitely couldn't have done it without them. And I guess that's kind of like what I'm trying to do here is localize our languages to fit Asia as well, so that what we're finding is a lot of Asian speaking countries, folks may not be natively reading English, and I think our team's doing a good job now, kind of helping this population get up on DeFi, which I think is huge for the industry as
It
well
is.
as
It
just
is.
helping people
It's a
out.
gigantic market. And I can personally kind of shout out to like Tasha and Nipun from
Yes,
from Alpha, right? Because that's a Bangkok team, and so
yeah,
that's definitely like non-Western. So there's definitely non-Western teams out there. It's just a function of
but the shout out there is Go Bears. We all went to Cal.
it's true, actually, right? That is, I think that came up earlier today. We were just talking with Berkeley Blockchain, and
Oh, you
just
were okay.
yeah, talking about the SOTA from like Plasm. So it's a whole different ecosystem, Polkadot ecosystem. So there's a whole bunch of really interesting, and obviously Donsong, Oasis, and like there's a whole bunch of cool folks, came out of that
Yeah.
ecosystem.
I actually think it'd be really funny if the Berkeley blockchain team went and tracked down how many of the blockchain kind of founders and influencers went to Cal and just like, heck, even have an online conference. I joined that.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. All right, so maybe it's not like Maybe it's not Asian blockchain, it's Berkeley blockchain. So
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. That's really good. So, I guess for me, the next segment is really more about like what I call pocket picks, right? So in a sense, it's kind of like what are these underappreciated projects? That's really the question.
Yeah, I actually think to be helpful to folks that are kind of new to the space or even those who've been around for a while, this might be kind of odd, but I actually think the pocket picks here should be like synthetics and balancer. And
Wow,
I know
those I don't know how big your pockets are, but like they don't know. Those are some big pockets.
I guess so, right? I mean, I think of it this way. I think that Balancer, I haven't actually spoke with anybody on that team and just have been kind of a community member here and there throughout. And
Oh yeah.
that technology is fantastic. I mean, when we decided to launch our AMM, we forked the Balancer code because of the flexibility, because of the things that they could do. And then we put the Uniswap front end on it because that was more user friendly. But the new Balancer V2 as well has that capital efficiency you're talking about, where the lending protocols can go and grab off of that. And of course, Sushi's gone that way as well with their latest release. But I think Balancer and its underlying technology is not appreciated enough, frankly. And then synthetics. I mean, here, like my first entry into DeFi other than Compound was synthetics, and the kind of I say, okay, Ponzi-nomics in a good way, in the sense that, it's sticky. It's super sticky. Like you get in the synthetics ecosystem, you stake your tokens, you're looking at the dashboard and it's like, oh my God, I'm getting 30-some% return annually on the synthetics underlying, and I'm getting leverage when I
Yep.
mint SUSD. Like that's an
Yep.
amazing system. And besides that, they have one of the strongest communities that folks should model after. We're looking at a Spartan council type thing for our governance, and then also, the team and the technology they lead and the thought process, it's fantastic. I think to me, having smaller cap pocket picks are kind of in some ways dangerous, and that I think that. I mean, yeah, I do think that these are underappreciated from that standpoint.
Well, and it's nice, right? Because I think underappreciated is really the key here, and I love the kind of contrarian perspective that you're providing, right? And so for me, I think Fernando is probably next on my hit list to get on the show from Balancer. So it's definitely we've had Kane Warwick, so we're
Yep.
excited. We're excited to have him back, of course. So yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, it's funny you mentioned that you actually did work at sort of a Steve Jobs Apple, but like, in a sense, he's always my inspiration for the segment about the big idea, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is like, his big idea was personal computing, so I'm always interested to know about my guests and what their big ideas are, so like, I'd love to hear your big idea.
Yeah, so I think maybe there's two big ideas directionally I've been stewing on, and one is obviously the DeFi side, the other one's more the NFT side, which I think for folks today are interested in both. One is the idea of capital efficiency blown up. Like where does this kind of lead to in the next year or two? you know uh where are the next DeFi users, where are the next blockchain users? And the idea of capital efficiency on a protocol to protocol level, I think that is a huge idea. The fact that the kind of like the corporate bank to bank type lending system is much bigger than the peer to peer lending system is something that we're doubling down on. And with the Iron Bank initiative with Yearn, the idea that liquidity should be used across the board to all of the protocols, to become the liquidity backbone. And the kind of next jump here is to say, look, um, once I've had some amount of data that I can establish and show to the banks, I would say, look, I know you guys are traditional banks. You don't deal with this weirdo crypto thing. I get it. But check this out. If you have a junk bond tranche, how much is that returning? A, and B, what's your historic loss been for this junk bond? All
Ha
right.
ha.
Now let's look at what I have here
Yeah.
with the Iron Bank.
Yeah.
And look, it's what are the failure rates? I give you all the statistics that it's completely backed up. You don't even need, Ernst and Young to audit this crap. Just go look on the blockchain, click on every single thing if you want to. It's all there. Now, look at the return rate and look at the rate of loss and tell me you don't want to allocate some percent of your large,
I
negative
love
interest
this.
rate
I
or
love this. I love
0.5%
this.
money into
This is
this.
super compelling.
So I need to establish that track record first of like, okay,
Yep.
the protocol, we did unfortunately have some incident with the with our partnership with Alpha there at the smart contract.
Yep. Sure.
I know that like we're not trying to bring up bad stuff, but looking at that event, none of our smart contracts have failed in throughout ever historically at Cream, and no user funds have been lost. Like if you deposited money, come get it. Come get it. Some people say, "Oh my God, I can't get my money out of the Iron Bank." Like, I don't know. Why don't you show me a withdrawal where it didn't happen today, and I'll tell you, how we can get that fixed. So I don't think that that's the case. Like, there's no such
So
thing.
you're
So
telling me that the Lannisters always pay their debts? Is that what I'm hearing?
that's true. And so, with the capital efficiency and with the safety and kind of the structure we have in place and the increasing liquidity, I think that this big idea is that the banks are going to come to us soon and be like, hey,
Yeah.
man, can I get a piece of that action where I can exactly see what's going on? The second thing is the NFT space. I've always thought I've been a big fan of the metaverse and crypto voxel. So my passion
Cool.
project is Machi X and our kind of helping NFT artists up, and that we've done a lot of launching galleries. So we have some galleries on crypto voxels, and the breakthrough there is when I think about how easy it is. So Miko, if you're like, hey man, I want to buy this parcel by the ocean, like, okay, cool. Well, that one's mine. So like, look, if I'll give it to you for like, I don't know, like 3 to 5 ETH or whatever it's called, and I could just put that on chain, and then you can execute that. And then that's it. There's no title insurance. You don't need to be like, is the title clean, or there's no escrow. Like, oh, I got to pay like 10% now to some person to like make sure the money is no. The smart contract does all that.
Yeah.
So this big idea is that eventually there's a future where land deeds are going to be recorded somewhat, hopefully on chain soon,
Sure.
and that transfer of real estate as NFTs will be huge. And now maybe Earth isn't going to get there. Maybe it's going to get there on Mars first, is my thinking, because that's a brand new infrastructure that'll probably be entirely on chain.
I like that. And it'll all be based on Dogecoin, thanks to Elon Musk. I'm kidding. But actually, one of the hilarious things Elon Musk said about Mars is he said that SpaceX Mars colonies will not be subject to any terrestrial legal framework.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, oh, wow. Like he's throwing down the gauntlet, right? It's sort of like, wow, okay, that's, go for it. Go for it, Elon. You're setting up your own little SpaceX.
Maybe it's going to be run by a DAO. Maybe it'll be run by some kind of DAO-based organizations where people will be digitally represented and interests will be captured that way, and decisions will be made as a DAO. I don't know. That might be kind of crazy sounding now, but it may happen.
Yeah, so I guess from a last segment perspective, I'd love to steer us towards a roadmap, right? Because this has been like a rollicking conversation. It's been super gratifying. And I just want to kind of get the like what happens next. Like we're all kind of waiting for new services and new functions. And I know you guys have an incredibly creative approach, but I'd love to kind of get a plan if there is one.
Yeah. So we're expanding the categories of assets that we're bringing on as collateral. We have already actually. So other than like major coins like Ethereum, Bitcoin, and governance tokens like Balancer, for example, YFI and C.R.E.A.M, and Sushi. We have and then we have like liquidity provider positions we've added. So we've added Sushi and Uniswap LP positions. That's cool. So people can supply that and borrow against that as a collateral. So that's pretty cool. And then I see it like liquidity providing is like you get to run your own exchange in a decentralized way. Cool. That's like your own business. And then you stake that, you're basically putting your business on, as an asset on lien to leverage against that. That's no different than how businesses are run today. And then the next thing too we're adding is like synthetic assets. So we've been talking to some of the folks in the synthetic assets space. Yeah, why not, right? So you have a synthetic asset.
Yep.
Why can't you then put that on a lending market and use that?
Yep.
So that's on the traditional old like no protocol to protocol lending C.R.E.A.M v1. And then on C.R.E.A.M v2, we're going to continue to beat down the Iron Bank thing, and we're integrating with more partners now. So both on the partners on the supply side, so protocols that have liquidity they want to put to use, and then I don't want to talk about any specific project names, but there are a few out there that manage, tranche debt risk. There's others out there that have huge saving banks that need a place to deposit their money. We're working with protocols like that to get more liquidity in. On the other side, our friends at Alpha Mora are getting a more rigorous audit that will be wrapping up soon.
Yep.
And we're really looking forward to that as we build our liquidity through partners existing like Curve and Yearn, to have partners that use this liquidity for capital efficiency, like Yearn and like Alpha Homora and like others that we'll have discussions with in terms of using that. Continuing down the protocol is the roadmap. And now it's looking more like an integration game, which again goes back to kind of like the Web2 stuff we talked about. And then, except now we just say, here's how you do it and have at it. You want to ask questions, we can talk, or you can just build it yourself. And then flash loans, we're very close to releasing our flash loan product across all the chains. So across BSC, Phantom, Ethereum. What that will do is allow people to have a deeper set of assets to borrow against. And so that's going to be released soon. And that's interesting. And then once we have the flash loans, it actually opens up for some significant leverage scenarios that can be automated that we haven't quite productized. So there are a few things up our sleeve going back to the theme of capital efficiency.
Wow, that sounds intense. There's a ton coming down the pipe, so watch out.
Yeah. I think we're big on experimenting and pushing the boundaries. I think that's super fun and is exciting. And because of that, we're also putting in more guardrails. So we've innovated on the guardrail side. We've created the supply cap notion that Compound didn't have, but they did help us say, well, here they reviewed our code and say, yeah, that looks good, but you should probably add this and that. Like, hey, thanks. And then when we're done, we submitted a pull request right back to Compound, like, hey, thanks, And
Yep.
now we just got our collateral cap feature that also is another safety feature that we're going through an audit, and once that's done, we'll also submit a pull request back to Compound. So they're welcome to use it if they like. Certainly we appreciate that they built the original thing, and so that allows for one of the biggest problems in lending and peer-to-peer is that you put money into these pools, and then if they're all connected with no restrictions, while it is capital efficient, it does expose some risk. And as we go into the long tail of assets, we as C.R.E.A.M and not them as Compound, require more of these guardrails that we're building. So I think having more safety features so that we can isolate the risk away from the main pot of money as the pot gets bigger is very important. So that's also on the roadmap.
Yeah. And I think obviously things like risk management, risk scoring, and these kind of like mechanisms become really intriguing. And there's a big need for innovation there.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, this has been really great. And thanks for joining MikoBits show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet.
MikoBits.